Welcome back to Miss B Biology. This is a revision lesson on the adaptation of the small intestine. So grab your book and grab your pen and let us begin. The lesson objective is to explain how the small intestine is adapted for absorption of nutrients. The foods you are looking at on your screen, rice, potato, pasta, they all contain starch. And starch is a large molecule that is made up of repeated units of glucose, right? So this large molecule right here represents starch, and then the orange circles represents glucose. The enzyme amylase in digestion breaks down the large starch molecule into the small units that are called glucose. All right, these molecules, they are now small enough to move across the wall of the small intestine to get into your blood. The digestion of starch is completed in the small intestine. After the small intestine, we have the large intestine. And the large intestine, this is where the formation of feces begin. So it means that the nutrients that you have in your small intestine, they need to leave the small intestine and get into the blood before they end up in the large intestine, because that would be waste. All right, so what we're going to be looking at is how is the small intestine adapted to get the nutrients out into the blood before the nutrients get to your large intestine. The first adaptation is that the small intestine is long and folded. In some books, it will say the small intestine is about 5 meters long, and that allows for more time for absorption of nutrients. Remember, the aim is to get the nutrients out of the small intestine and into the blood before it gets to the large intestine, because remember, that is where feces is formed. Once the nutrients get into your large intestine, there's no going back, right? It is going to be released from your body as waste. The inside lining of the wall of the small intestine has many finger-like projections that are called villi. So let us now look at how these villi allows for the small intestine to carry out its function of absorption before the nutrients get to the large intestine. Adaptation number 2. The wall of the small intestine is covered with villi and microvilli. So to your left is a diagram representing villi, and microvilli now would be smaller villi that are found on this main villi. And what does that do for the small intestine? It increases the surface area for absorption. So there is more space for nutrients to leave the small intestine to get to the blood. Remember, the aim is to get the nutrients out of the small intestine and into the blood before they get down into the large intestine. Third adaptation is that there is a rich supply of blood. If you look at the diagram to your left, you'll notice that there are blood vessels in the villi. And this allows for a concentration gradient to be maintained. What do I mean by that? So say, for example, this is your small intestine. The nutrients are found in the small intestine. Right? Let us draw about 4 glucose molecules. And then outside here represents the blood. Remember, your nutrients need to move from the small intestine into the blood. So what is going to happen? The nutrients will diffuse across. And they can diffuse across because according to our definition for diffusion, it is particles moving from high concentration to low concentration. And look at it. We have 4 molecules of glucose in our small intestine, none in the blood. So in the intestine is high concentration, the blood is low concentration. The blood will then take these molecules away, right? So these are now in the blood, the blood is gonna take these molecules away because the blood is flowing, right? So what is gonna happen next? We still have two molecules of glucose right here and none in the blood. So the concentration gradient is maintained. So more glucose can move across. Hope you get this. Next adaptation is that there are many mitochondria for active transport. What is this active transport needed for? We just spoke about diffusion. So let's go back to the small intestine. We now have one glucose molecule leave in the small intestine. We need it to get over before it gets to the large intestine. So that's our blood right there. After a while, the amount of glucose in our blood compared to the small intestine will be higher. So how will this one glucose molecule get over into the blood? It can't diffuse because remember, diffusion is the movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration. And this is not high concentration to low concentration. So how will this one glucose move over? It is by active transport. Active transport is the movement of molecules from where there is less to where there is more, and that is why the many mitochondria are needed. Always remember that your small intestine is adapted to get the nutrients out before they get to the large intestine. Last adaptation is that the wall of the small intestine is just one cell thick, and so it means that it is very thin, and so it allows for a shorter diffusion distance. Okay, I hope you understand the adaptation of the small intestine. Let us now look at an exam question. So this question says, explain how the small intestine is adapted for efficient absorption of nutrient molecule. So in your exam, they could say nutrient molecule, or they could say glucose or amino acid. It's the same answer that you're writing. Let's look at the command word now. So it says explain. When you're asked to explain, it means you're giving reason. Tell me why something is happening. So for this question, we're looking at why the adaptations that we're going to be naming, why do they allow for efficient absorption? Okay, so the first adaptation is the small intestine is long and folded. Okay, so how does this allow for efficient absorption? Yeah, it provides more time for absorption. So if you go to the exam and all you write is this bit, the small intestine is long and folded, that's the adaptation. You did not explain how this adaptation allows for efficient absorption, and that is why you need to add this to it. So let's read it one more time. The small intestine is long and folded, so more time for absorption. Next one, the small intestine is covered in villi and microvilli. So what? So it provides a large surface area. Number 3, rich blood supply is present. That is the adaptation. So what? To maintain a concentration gradient. Number 4, it is one cell thick. So there is a shorter diffusion distance. Lastly, many mitochondria present, and this is for active transport of nutrients. I hope you understand this. Thank you so much for watching and all the best in your exams. Bye bye.